The Portsmouth County Courthouse doesn't smell like justice. It smells of lemon oil floor wax and the high-bond paper of men who have never bled for anything. My father, Silas O'Neill, doesn't need to shout to destroy a room. He owns it with a lean of his shoulder. He sits at the prosecution table, his charcoal suit tailored to a surgical edge, his cufflinks catching the sterile hum of the fluorescent lights. When he speaks, his voice is a chilled blade, sharp and amused. "She didn't serve," he says, loud enough for the gallery to lean in. "She played soldier. She stole our name to hide from a life she couldn't handle." The jolt hits me like a concussive blast. It's a visceral erasure, a systematic stripping of the 3 years I spent kneeling in the silt of flood zones and the dust of triage tents. It's not just a lie, it's a theft of my very breath. I stand alone at the defense table, no counsel, no open files. Just the phantom weight of a trauma kit on my shoulder and the steady throb in my scarred knee. Across the aisle, my parents are a fortress of high society machinery, lawyers with leather briefcases and smiles that look like winter. I don't look at them. I ground my feet into the marble and count my respirations. My skin is crawling, a fine tremor hidden beneath my uniform, but my hands remain flat on the mahogany. Steady, trained. Then the judge speaks. Judge Halloway. He studies me for a heartbeat too long, a fraction of a second that breaks the legal rhythm. It isn't judgment in his eyes. It's recognition. A gaze that defies the truth my father just spat into the air. "Very well," the judge says, his voice unreadable. "Ms. O'Neill, for the record, it seems you won't be needing a lawyer." The Portsmouth County Courthouse does not breathe. It only echoes. It is a structure of polished mahogany and cold marble, designed to make a person feel small, transient, and loud. The air inside is climate-controlled to a surgical degree, scrubbed of life, smelling of lemon oil wax and the high-bond paper of legal briefs. It is a clean smell. A civilized smell. It is a lie. I stand at the defense table. Alone. My back is a straight line, a habit of the spine that has nothing to do with comfort and everything to do with muscle memory. My hands rest flat on the dark wood. I watch my fingers. They are steady. They shouldn't be, given the pressure in the room, but they are. Across the aisle, my father sits like a king waiting for a coronation. Silas O'Neill doesn't look at me. He has mastered the art of looking through me, treating my presence as a glitch in the prestigious O'Neill lineage. He is immaculate. His charcoal suit is tailored to a lethal edge, his silver hair swept back with calculated precision. Beside him, Marcus Thorne adjusts a gold cufflink. Thorne's smile is synthetic. It's the kind of smile that belongs on a billboard for a high-end funeral home. The respondent, Fiona O'Neill, Thorne begins. His voice is a rich baritone, practiced and resonant. Has spent the last 3 years in a state of self-imposed exile. She neglected her duties to the estate. She ignored the stewardship of her heritage. She pursued a life of reckless attention-seeking under the guise of service. I don't flinch. I don't look at Silas. I have learned the art of soldier's stoicism. In a triage tent, when the mortars are thudding close enough to rattle the teeth in your head, and the floor is slick with the price of a mistake, you don't react to the noise. You focus on the heartbeat, you count the respirations, you stay in the rhythm. My silence in this courtroom isn't a confession, it's a tactical choice. I am assessing the damage before I apply the tourniquet. As Thorne's voice drones on, describing my instability, the courtroom walls bleed away. The fluorescent hum of the ceiling lights transforms into the whine of a turbine. I am back in the belly of a Black Hawk, the floorboard vibrating beneath my boots. I can taste it again, the copper of Kandahar's dust and the cloying, oily scent of JP-8 fuel. I remember the weight of the medical kit, 30 pounds of life and death strapped to my back. My left shoulder hitches instinctively now, feeling the phantom pull of that strap. She has brought shame to the O'Neill name, Thorne says, his tone shifting to a mock grief. I shift my gaze to Judge Halloway. He sits behind a bench that looks like a barricade. He is studying my Class A uniform, not the fabric, not the fit. He is looking at the ribbons. His eyes linger on the V device for a fraction of a second longer than a civilian would. There is a spark there. I reach into my pocket. My thumb finds the notched brass edge of my grandfather's compass. It is cold, it is scratched, it is real. I recall a night during the Elias flood recovery. The water rising, the smell of stagnant silt, The raw panic of people who realized their walls wouldn't save them. I see a similar pen resting on Holloway's bench. Mr. Thorne, the judge interrupts. His voice is measured. That will be enough of the characterization. Let's move to the facts of the filing. Silas leans toward his lawyer, whispering something sharp. He is irritated. He wanted a performance. He wanted me to break, to cry, to prove the instability he spent 18 months manufacturing. Ms. O'Neill, the judge says, looking directly at me, you understand you have the right to representation. You are choosing to proceed alone. I meet his gaze. I don't smile. I don't plead. I keep my voice low, a controlled frequency that cuts through the room's artificial air. Yes, Your Honor. 3 words. That's all I give them. Silas scoffs, a quiet, jagged sound that ripples through the gallery. He thinks he is winning because I am quiet. He thinks he owns the narrative because he's the one talking. He's wrong. In a world of noise, the person who stays silent is the only one who can hear the building collapsing. The spring is coiling. The debt of justice is coming due. And Silas O'Neill is about to find out that a woman who has survived a literal war is not afraid of the one he started in this room. The afternoon sun cuts through the high, arched windows of the courtroom. It doesn't bring warmth. It only creates long, geometric shadows that stretch across the floor like the bars of a cage. The mystery of my life is currently being debated, as if I am a piece of disputed acreage, rather than a woman sitting 10 feet away. Marcus Thorne stands for the second hour of his presentation. He looks agitated. The oily sheen of his confidence is starting to crack. He's hit a wall he didn't expect, and it's a wall built by a bureaucracy even more rigid than this court. Your Honor, Thorne says, his voice losing its rehearsed baritone. We have encountered a significant obstruction in the discovery process. We attempted to subpoena the respondent's full service records, but the Department of the Army has placed a Level 4 restriction on her personnel file. A murmur ripples through the gallery. I feel Silas straighten beside Thorne, his brow furrows. This wasn't in his script. He expected a paper trail of a girl who washed out. Instead, he's found a void. They claim, Thorne continues, glancing at me with genuine suspicion, that the details of her final 6 months are classified for national security. I keep my face a mask of stone. My heart hammers against my ribs, a fast, tactical rhythm. Even I didn't know the Army had locked the file that tightly. I think back to the transit hub at Fort Bragg, the man in the dark suit who handed me my discharge papers. He told me that some actions are better left off the record. Judge Holloway leans forward. His eyes are sharp, dissecting Thorne's frustration. The military doesn't lock files. Do you have any other way to prove your claims? Thorne clears his throat. He pivots. We do, Your Honor. We have the testimony of Mr. Elias Vance. Vance is called to the stand. He smells of cheap cigars and stale coffee, a pawn Silas bought years ago. Vance takes the oath and begins his rehearsed litany. I never saw her, Vance lies. His eyes dart to Silas for approval. I reach into my leather case. I pull out a single photograph. On the monitor, I see a detail Vance missed. Hidden behind overgrowth, a brand new industrial-grade irrigation valve. I spent 3 nights installing that system by flashlight after my shift at the clinic. Silas doesn't see it. He can't see the lifeblood I've been pumping into his land. The court reporter's keys clack clack clack. Suddenly the smell of lemon polish is gone. The room is hot. I'm back on the extraction line, cutting through wreckage. Ms. O'Neill, Holloway's voice breaks the static. I blink, the extraction line is gone. I'm back in the cage of shadows. Mr. Vance, I say, voice low and controlled. If I wasn't there, who installed the industrial-grade drainage system? Vance stammers, his eyes go wide. Silas glares at him. I don't wait for an answer. I've already planted the seed. I sit back. The spring is vibrating now. Someone in the shadows of the Pentagon locked my file. A soldier doesn't have to be seen to be present. I am Fiona O'Neill, and I am right here. The transition from the dirt of the estate to the ink of the ledger is seamless for Silas. He believes that numbers are the ultimate truth. He thinks they are sterile, objective things that cannot be manipulated by service records or the messy reality of a disaster zone. He is wrong. In the field, A ledger is the difference between having enough blood bags for a mass casualty event and watching a squad bleed out in the mud. I learned to track every ounce of supply while the world was screaming. Silas only ever tracked how much his name was worth in the morning edition. Marcus Thorne stands, flourishing a financial audit with the grace of a matador. Your Honor, let us look at the reality of the O'Neill estate. For the 3 years the respondent was deployed, the accounts associated with the property fell into a state of near insolvency. It was a ruin of unpaid obligations. Silas nods solemnly. He plays the part of the burdened patriarch well. This is the friction point, the mystery of the benefactor. I watch the monitor as Thorne pulls up the tax records. Red lines dominate the screen. They look like open wounds. 3 years of late fees, 3 years of pending status. It was Silas O'Neill's business acumen, Thorne claims, that pulled this legacy back from the brink. I feel the familiar heat of the compressed spring in my chest. I remember sitting in a dark tent in Poland, trying to navigate the tax portal through a lagging VPN. I remember the exact amount of my hazard pay, every cent wired to a blinded escrow account. The judge leans over his glasses, his eyes scanning the digital ledger. The ledger shows a wire transfer of $50,000 made last July to clear the back taxes. Where did that come from? Thorne hesitates. He checks his notes, the paper crinkling in the quiet room. A private O'Neill trust, Your Honor. Which one? I keep my voice at a frequency that demands attention without pleading for it. Silas looks at me, a sudden sharp suspicion flickering behind his eyes. They don't know, they assumed it was a gift, but I was the one working the graveyard shift of their lives. The audience in the gallery leans forward. The debt of justice is a physical thing now. He is claiming credit for the financial sacrifice of the daughter he's trying to disinherit. I don't pull out the wire confirmation codes. Not yet. I want Silas to lie on the record first. In the infantry, you don't fire the moment you see the target. You wait until they're in the kill zone. Thorne moves on to the maintenance costs. He shows a slide of the estate's generator repairs. Another $5,000, paid by Mr. O'Neill's private accounts, he says. I reach into my leather case and thumb the edge of a receipt from a hardware store 3 towns over. Silas is so busy pretending. He hasn't realized the house was never in danger. The silence in the room is heavy. It's the silence of a fuse burning down. Silas looks at the judge, then at me. The ledger is actually a map leading straight back to his own deception. I sit back, my hands flat on the mahogany. I am Fiona O'Neill, and the price of this legacy is written in my blood, not his ink. The trial moves from the wallet to the mind. This is where Silas intends to finish me. If he cannot prove I am a thief, he will prove I am broken. Marcus Thorne calls for a change in tone. He dims the lights in the courtroom, the mechanical hum of the motorized blinds sounding like a heavy gate closing. The shadows sharpen. It's a theatrical trick, a way to make the air feel somber, heavy with the weight of concern. Your Honor, Thorne says, his voice dropping to a low, melodic register. We must address the psychological toll of the respondent's choices. We have obtained a restricted medical assessment from her discharge. It mentions unpredictable hypervigilance and dissociative markers. The court reporter's keys clack clack clack. In the dim light, the sound shifts. It's no longer a typewriter. It's the staccato rhythm of a saw gun firing from a distant ridge. I feel my pupils dilate. The validation gap yawns wide here. Fiona O'Neill didn't just abandon her family. Thorne continues, pacing near my table. She returned as a woman who is fundamentally unstable. She is a danger to the very legacy she claims to protect. The clack of Thorne's briefcase closing hits me like a percussion grenade. Suddenly, the smell of lemon polish is gone. I'm back in the raw heat of the recovery site. My hands are moving, guided by a frantic, cold logic. I can hear the screaming, but I am silent. I am working. She is a liability, Silas says. He doesn't look at me. He's referring to the security report Thorne just displayed on the monitors. It's a grainy image of me from 6 months ago, pinned against the wall of the grandfather's study. Thorne paints it as a breakdown. He describes me harassing a contractor Silas hired for a renovation. I remember that day. I remember the man Silas hired. He was stripping the 19th century mahogany panels from the walls, replacing it with cheap veneer. I didn't harass him, I performed a tactical intervention. I pinned him to the wall. I saved the study, but to Silas, protecting the truth is just unpredictable aggression. Look at her, Thorn says, gesturing toward me. Even now, she doesn't speak. I look down at my hands. They are resting on the mahogany table, perfectly still. My pulse is a fast, steady rhythm in my throat, but my fingers do not twitch. I am counting my respirations. He doesn't realize that my conduct is the only thing that has been becoming of this family for the last 3 years. I shift my gaze to Judge Holloway. He isn't looking at the screen. He's watching my hands. He recognizes the hyperfocus of a medic, who is still on the clock. The friction is reaching a fever pitch. Silas is leaning forward, waiting for me to snap. He wants a scene. He wants a confirmation of the broken girl narrative. He's going to be disappointed. I stay in the silence. It's a silence I earned in places where noise meant death. Silas O'Neill is about to find out that a woman who has survived a literal war is not afraid of the one he started in this room. The spring is coiled to the breaking point. The debt of justice is screaming for payment. I am Fiona O'Neill, and I am the only one in this room who knows exactly how this story ends. The air in the courtroom has grown heavy, pressurized by the mounting friction between my father's polished fiction and the jagged edges of my reality. When the bailiff calls Eleanor O'Neill to the stand, the compressed spring of my composure threatens to fracture. My mother walks with a fragile ghost-like grace. Her heels click softly, a rhythmic tapping sound. Silas sits back. His posture radiates a smug sense of ownership. Marcus Thorne approaches her gently. His voice drops to a sympathetic, rehearsed croon. "Mrs. O'Neill," Thorne begins, "how many times did she reach out to you?" Eleanor's voice is a mere whisper, not a single word. A cold, hollow ache opens in my chest. The validation gap here isn't just a distance, it's a wound. Silas watches me. A thin, cruel smile plays on his lips. I close my eyes for a fraction of a second. Suddenly, the smell of lemon polish is gone. I'm back in the transit hub. I remember the blue ink of the pen leaking onto my thumb, the weight of the letters. Trying to bridge the miles with words I wasn't sure I'd live to say in person. I stand to cross-examine her. I don't use a legal pad. I don't have a script. The room goes quiet. Thorne looks at me, waiting for the unpredictable aggression. "Mom," I say, "do you remember the blue-bound journal I left in our mailbox?" Eleanor blinks. "I never saw any journal, Fiona." I turn my gaze to Silas. His mask slips for a fraction of a second. The realization hits the room like a shockwave. Silas didn't just ignore my service. He actively intercepted the bridge between a mother and her daughter. "I sent 64 letters, Mom," I say. "I have the tracking numbers for the journal." I look at Silas. His hands are shaking. Eleanor looks at Silas, then back at me. She's been living in a cage built of lies. The silence in the room is absolute. It's the silence of a fuse burning down to the powder. I sit back down. My hands are flat on the table, steady. I am Fiona O'Neill, and I am no longer the only one who knows the truth. The transition from defense to counteroffensive is cold and surgical. I move from the table to the center of the floor. Shedding the stoicism for a sharp, tactical precision, the spring has reached its limit. Marcus Thorne attempts to block my path. He stands, a motion to strike my previous line of questioning already on his lips. His voice rises, desperate to reclaim the rhythm he lost. He slams a heavy leather folder onto the prosecution table. The sharp bang echoes off the marble. My vision shifts. The mahogany fades into the gray, churning silt of the Ilias floodwaters. I'm back in the raw reality. The air tastes of stagnant rain, diesel, and burnt metal. I see the faces of families huddled on rooftops, their eyes reflecting rescue flares. I remember the sound, a low, vibrating moan of a world being unmade by the tide. My father calls my service a stunt, I say. He says I chose to disappear, but in a disaster zone, you don't disappear. You become the only thing that's visible to someone drowning in the dark. I reach into my folder. I pull a single laminated sheet. It is a civilian manifest from the Ilias Emergency Triage Center. "Mr. Thorne, you've spent the morning talking about my unpredictable nature. But you haven't mentioned the name at the top of this transport list. Arthur Sterling. Thorne freezes. Silas's eyes go wide, his face draining. He didn't see a girl seeking attention, I tell the court. I look at Judge Holloway now. I see him lean forward. He saw a medic who stayed in 4 feet of rising water. He's the one who signed this manifest. Same silver fountain pen. The courtroom descends into a stunned, airless silence. I have bridged the gap. I have dragged the sterile world into raw reality. I look at the manifest in my hand. I remember the heat of the water, Sterling's coat soaked in mud. The manifest is verified, I say, my voice a flat line. I turn and walk back to my table. My boots click against the marble. The judge is still staring at the silver pen. Silas is staring at the manifest. I sit down and place my hands flat on the mahogany. Steady. I am Fiona O'Neill, and I'm just getting started. The validation gap is no longer a distance. It has become a weapon. The financial phase of the trial feels like an autopsy. The atmosphere in the courtroom is suffocating. Silas O'Neill sits with his arms crossed. He is a king watching his treasury being audited by a ghost. Marcus Thorne senses the shift in the room's gravity. He calls Silas's lead accountant to the stand. The man is a nervous bookkeeper who lives in the sterile world of spreadsheets. Describe the state of the O'Neill estate's liquidity during the respondent's absence. It was precarious, the accountant stammers. But every month, like clockwork, funds arrived. We assumed they were private injections from Mr. O'Neill's diversified holdings. Silas nods. He wears an expression of humble benevolence. The debt of justice is reaching a breaking point in my chest. I stand. I reach into my leather case and pull a stack of my own bank statements. They are worn at the edges, carried through 3 countries and 1 war zone. I walk to the accountant and hand him the documents. Look at the routing numbers, Mr. Miller, I say. Look at the source. Does it match the hazard duty pay? The accountant's eyes widen. He compares the sheets. The silence that follows is visceral. Suddenly, the hum of the courtroom transforms. I'm back in a cold, damp tent in Poland. I'm staring at a flickering laptop screen, calculating rent, taxes, generator costs. I lived on MREs and grit so that the ledger in Portsmouth would stay black. I turn to face my father. You called me a liability, Silas, I say. But while you were at the club, I was wiring my hazard pay. The revelation hits Silas like a physical blow. His charity, his reputation, it was all funded by the daughter he tried to erase. The spring is now vibrating so violently that the mahogany seems to hum. Silas isn't looking at the accountant anymore. He's looking at the floor. I look at Judge Holloway. He has finally seen the ghost. The financial and moral bankruptcy of Silas O'Neill is complete. I walk back to my table and sit. I place my hands flat on the wood. Study. The truth is no longer a defense. It is an eviction notice. The courtroom air feels thin. It's as if the oxygen has been sucked out by the sheer weight of the last hour. The compressed spring has reached its absolute limit. I can feel the tension humming in the floorboards. Judge Holloway doesn't wait. He reaches for the thin, red-tabbed file. It is sat on the corner of his bench, like an unexploded ordnance. This court has heard enough, Holloway says. His voice echoes. Mr. Thorne, you have spent 3 days attempting to paint Fiona O'Neill as a ghost. But it seems the only ghosts in this room are the facts you chose to bury. I stand at my table. My back is a straight line. I don't breathe. The judge opens the file, twist 7. It isn't just a service record. It is the restricted narrative. I have spent 30 years on this bench, Holloway says. Silas is leaning back, but he looks like he's falling. I have never seen a man try to disinherit the very person who kept him from ruin. Holloway turns a page. The sound is sharp. This file contains a formal letter of commendation from the governor's office. It was signed for by Silas O'Neill and promptly disappeared. It details the respondent's actions during the Ilias levee breach. Suddenly, the smell of lemon polish is gone. I'm back in the dark. I remember the freezing weight of the water. Arthur Sterling. I remember the silver fountain pen he gripped. The man she saved, Holloway continues. Arthur Sterling lived. The snap occurs here. It's the visible collapse of Silas O'Neill. For the first time, He's looking at the person he tried to kill with silence. Authority over the O'Neill family assets remains with Fiona O'Neill. Ownership is verified, stewardship is proven. Your daughter carried the weight of this entire county. Holloway lifts the gavel. Case dismissed with prejudice. The gavel comes down, thud. I don't celebrate, I just stand there. The phantom weight of the trauma kit finally lifting from my shoulder. I reach into my pocket and touch the notched brass of my grandfather's compass. It's steady. I am Fiona O'Neill, the truth is out in the light. And for the first time in 3 years, I am not the only one standing guard. The gavel's strike is a dull, final thud. It echoes through the chamber, but it feels as loud as a breech charge in the sudden silence that follows. The compressed spring has finally snapped. The energy it released has left the room feeling hollow, like a house after the windows have been blown out by a storm. I remain standing. My back is still a straight line. My pulse, which has been a steady, tactical drumbeat for 3 days, finally begins to slow. I don't feel the rush of adrenaline I expected. I don't feel the warmth of a win. I only feel clarity. It's the kind of clarity that comes when the smoke clears from a battlefield, and you can finally see the cost of the ground you've held. To my right, Silas O'Neill is a portrait of total collapse. He doesn't move. He doesn't protest. He sits with his hands, gripped so tightly on the mahogany table that his knuckles are the color of bone. The dominant patriarch, the architect of his own legend, has been hollowed out in public. Marcus Thorne is already packing his briefcase. His hands are frantic, trembling. He doesn't look at Silas. He doesn't look at me. He knows that in this county, a man's reputation is his currency, and he just went bankrupt. I look at Silas. For years, I saw him as a mountain. Now, he's just a man in an expensive suit, shivering in a room that finally got too cold for him. The gallery begins to filter out. It's a low, respectful murmur. My mother, Eleanor, stands up. She doesn't go to Silas. She walks across the aisle, crossing the invisible wire he strung between us a decade ago. She stops in front of me, her eyes are red-rimmed, searching. "Fiona," she whispers. Her voice is fragile, but it's finding its edge. She reaches out. Her fingers graze the wool of my sleeve, lingering on the patch of the unit that became my family when my own felt like a ghost. Suddenly, the smell of lemon polish is gone. I'm back in the transit hub in Kuwait. I remember the weight of the envelopes in my hand. I remember the physical ache of writing "Mom" on the front, wondering if she'd ever see the ink. "He told me you hated us," Eleanor says, her voice breaking. "He made me believe that your silence was your answer to our love." I look past her at Silas. He is watching us now. For the first time, I see the real ghost in the room. It isn't me, it's him. "I never stopped writing, Mom," I say. The words feel heavy, real. She doesn't hug me. We aren't there yet. We are 2 people standing in the wreckage of a man's ego, realizing we are the ones who actually own the foundation. I turn back to my table. I gather my folder. I slide it into the leather case. The courtroom is almost empty now. The hum of the lights feels less like a threat and more like a drone. I reach into my pocket and feel the notched brass of the compass. It's warm from my skin. I walk toward the door. I don't look back at Silas. In the infantry, you don't look back at the ground you've cleared. You look at the horizon. You look at what's next. The spring has released. The weight is gone. I am Fiona O'Neill, and for the first time in 3 years, I can breathe the air without tasting the dust. The drive back to the O'Neill estate is quiet. I roll the windows down. I let the cool, damp air of the Portsmouth evening wash over me. It smells of salt, pine, and the promise of rain, the civilized air of the coast finally mixing with the raw scent of the ground. The hum of the engine is the only thing filling the space where the courtroom's noise used to live. I turn into the long gravel drive. The headlights sweep across the white fence. It's still warped. The boards are still gray and weathered. Knox is waiting on the porch. He's a silent sentinel, his tail thumping a steady, rhythmic greeting against the wood. I don't go inside yet. I walk the perimeter. I look at the irrigation valves I installed by flashlight. I check the drainage pipes I laid when Silas told the world I was finding myself. I run my hand over the initials carved under the porch rail. The validation gap is closed. The truth doesn't need me to defend it anymore. It's written into the soil. I find Silas in the kitchen. The room is dim. He is standing by the window, silhouetted by the dying amber light of the sun. He looks older. His shoulders are slumped. He turns as I enter. He doesn't offer an apology. Instead, he reaches into his pocket. He pulls out the family watch. It's a gold-plated heirloom. He sets it on the table. "The judge made his point, Fiona," he says. "The land is yours, the name is yours." I look at the watch. It's beautiful, it's expensive, and it's entirely hollow. I reach into my pocket and pull out my grandfather's brass compass. I set it down next to the watch. The watch is a circle that repeats itself. The compass is a needle that points forward. "Keep the watch, Silas," I say. "You spent your whole life worrying about the time. I spent mine worrying about direction." The silence stretches between us. It isn't a heavy silence anymore. It's just empty. I pick up my compass. I leave the watch on the table. I walk out onto the porch and sit on the steps. Knox leans his head against my thigh. The sky is dark now. The first few drops of rain begin to click against the tin roof of the barn. My knee aches, a deep, familiar throb of old wounds and new weather. I think about the extraction line, the smell of magnesium and burnt metal. I don't need a gold watch to remember what I'm worth. I thumb the notch in the brass of my compass. The needle settles, it points north. I am Fiona O'Neill. I have paid my debts. I have held my ground. And for the first time in my life, I am exactly where I am supposed to be. The silence is over, the guard is home. The true measure of a life is rarely found in the trophies we display or the titles we polish for public view. We live in a world obsessed with the watch, the relentless ticking of social clockwork, the anxiety of how we are perceived, and the vanity of a name carved into stone. But names can be erased, and stones eventually crumble. The only thing that endures is the compass, the internal moral north that remains steady when the lights go out and the audience goes home. Respect is not a debt paid to status. It is a recognition of the invisible weight another person carries. We often mistake silence for absence and stoicism for a lack of feeling, forgetting that the deepest rivers are the ones that make the least noise. To truly respect a human being is to look past the version of them we created in our own minds and acknowledge the raw, gritty reality of their sacrifice. When we choose to see only what serves our ego, we don't just lose the person, we lose the truth. There is a profound philosophy in the act of staying. In a culture of constant motion and fleeting loyalties, the most radical thing one can do is remain grounded in their principles. Truth does not need a lawyer, and it does not need to shout. It is like the foundation of a house, unseen, uncelebrated, yet the only reason the roof stays up when the storm breaks. We find our worth not in the approval of those who look at us, but in the quiet accountability of those who look within us. In the end, we are all just stewards of the time we are given. We can spend it building monuments to ourselves, or we can spend it holding the line for someone else. The legacy that matters isn't the one handed over in a courtroom or printed on a ledger. It is the quiet certainty that when the world needed a guard, we didn't look away. We stayed, we stood, and that is more than enough. Thank you for walking this path with us, and for lending your ears to a story worth telling. If these reflections on truth and legacy resonated with you, I would be honored to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Where are you listening from, and what does legacy mean to you? To ensure you don't miss our upcoming narratives of resilience and the human spirit, please consider following and subscribing to the channel. Let's continue to explore the quiet, real, and meaningful corners of life together. Stay steady.